Hello, my name is Gina Harvey and I'm an Education Advisor with Hydro Tasmania. I'm also a member of the Water Literacy and Education Subcommittee, which is part of the Australian Water Association set of committees. And we've got a huge focus on helping educate and increase water literacy across Australia, particularly because water is such a valuable resource. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about how Hydro Tasmania engages with water and how we care for that water. So I mentioned before that I'm an education advisor. What does that mean? Essentially, it means that I visit schools and events around Tasmania and I share with people how Hydro Tasmania uses water to generate electricity. But not only that, how we also care for it. We can't just push the water through our power stations without looking after the species that live within the water and looking after the land around it as well. So just to give you a bit of background, Hydro Tasmania has been operating for well over 100 years. And in that time, we've built 30 power stations. We have 54 dams. We've got a number of smaller dams and weirs that we look after. And we've got 52 lakes. And a lot of those waterways do have a number of uses. They're not only used for Hydro Tasmania to store water in readiness to be pushed through a power station, they're also used by everyday people like you and me. For example, people who like to go fishing and kayaking, people like to swim, canoe clubs, people who row. Lake Barrington is pretty famous for many schools in Tasmania competing there for their rowing championships. People who just like to enjoy being by the water. Tasmania is one of Australia's wettest states, so we receive a lot of rainfall, particularly on our west coast. And many of Hydro Tasmania's catchment areas are in our elevated and more remote places. So Hydro Tasmania knows that we are custodians of the waterways. We are looking after it for the future. And that means we have a range of people who spend every day looking after the values of the water and looking after the water to ensure that it's there in a safe and quality way for years to come. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean that we ensure that our erosion controls are in place. We ensure that there are regular flows going past our dams and downstream into our riverways. We ensure that threatened species are managed within our waterways and dams. We ensure that there is equitable access for people who like to fish. So we work with places like Inland Fisheries Tasmania, particularly with the trout species. It's hugely popular in our Highland Lakes areas, particularly around the Great Lake. And we work with community groups who like to use our waterways for recreational purposes. So you might ask, so tell me again about how we use water to generate electricity. Well, not just electricity, renewable electricity. So, for example, we store water in large dams. In fact, very similar to the dam that's behind me there. So that's the Gordon Dam. That is one of our largest dams. It's in southwest Tasmania, and the power station that water is fed into is underground. So we use the energy of water. The water creates its own force when it moves downhill, so gravitational energy. So it moves through a big pipe called a penstock into the power station. And the first thing it does is it hits a big turbine. And the force of that water pushes that turbine really fast. The turbine's connected to a shaft, and that shaft spins a rotor inside a generator. And on that inside that generator is electromagnetic fields that push the electrons along, and we capture those electrons and deliver that through transmission lines to homes and businesses around Tasmania. So what happens to the water once it's gone through the power station, or simply once it hits the turbine, it goes straight back out again into our waterways. In fact, on some of our waterways, rivers such as the Derwent, the Mersey, the Forth, the Pieman, the South Esk, we have more than one power station. So that means that that water is used to generate power multiple times, renewable energy. It also means that that water can be used for other uses, such as on the Forth River, we have a major water treatment plant that supplies water to homes in Devonport, parts of Ulverston and Port Sorell and Latrobe. We also have major farms through that area. So water is pulled from there to irrigate. Much of the food that comes in our supermarkets will come from the Forth Valley area. That water then also flows through and becomes estuaries and out to our beaches. So how important is it for us at Hydro Tasmania to manage this water? It's incredibly important. And that's why we have scientists and hydrologists working every day to make sure that the water quality is high, that the volume of water is as it should be, and that our species, our threatened species and other species and weed and erosion management are high on our list of priorities for managing our waterways. Thanks for listening to me today. And if you have any questions about Hydro Tasmania and how we use water here, please forward in the chat box. Thank you.